Hello and welcome to Devon Live Chat, and joining us today is Mac McGill. Hi, Mac.
Hey. Hello.
So here we are all together, and you have a project which has been up and running for a little while, but unfortunately with what's been going on with shutting shops and businesses and everything else, your games cafe is hit a little bit of a rock bottom at the moment, hasn't it?
Yes, it has, unfortunately. Because of coronavirus, we've had to shut, and it looks like we're going to be shut for an unknown period of time. Like the rest of the hospitality industry, we're all in limbo.
Well, yeah, there's rumours that hospitality might be reopening fairly shortly, probably around about, I think it's July 15th or something like that. But then you've also got to take into account social distancing and everything else. And at 2 meters, I would have thought that your particular establishment would have a big problem at 2 meters.
Yes, we will, because most games you have to gather around a relatively small table to play. You've got to be pretty much next to one another. So unless they're families, we can't have them in. We can probably run D&D, but that's about it. Our normal board gaming sessions will probably have to be on hold. Games like Magic the Gathering, we probably won't be able to do at all, especially drafting events and things like that, where you actually pass packs of cards amongst you. And all the games where you've got common parts, we can't use at the moment, at least, because everyone's touching the same set of moving parts on the game board. So we're kind of snookered.
So even with a 1 meter rule, that's still not going to work for you, is it?
No. With a 1 meter rule, we can go to a 6-player plus a D&D game, which means that we can at least pay the cafe bills rather than make a profit.
It's a bit of a problem, really, isn't it? Because if you have a game and you've got lots and lots of people involved, and then you've got to go and sanitize it, a bit difficult at a game of cards, isn't it?
It's almost impossible. The general consensus in the gaming industry is our only option is quarantine, which means we basically take the game out of circulation for at least 3 days before we put it back in again.
Now, just before we start talking about some of the games and that which you have there, could you just explain what your business is all about and where you're positioned, and when times of the lockdown finishes, that people could come and find you?
Okay, we're on Ilfracombe High Street. You can't miss us. We're just along from the petrol station one way and Jeffrey's in the other. We're about in the middle of the two. You can't really miss us. Basically, we're a cafe that also does games. All kinds of tabletop games, not just board games, but card games, war games, anything you can play on a tabletop, we're up for it. We've got quite a few ourselves, but if we haven't got it, but you have and you want to come and play it, by all means bring it. We don't mind. Our games include things like Dungeons and Dragons sessions, which are very popular with quite a lot of people. And to be honest, they help us keep us open through the winter, because like everyone else, we're reliant on tourism. But that keeps us paying the bills during the winter. In the summer, we get the tourists down and we get a lot of tourists in, especially on rainy days, of course. But we are basically a cafe. If you just want a coffee and a slice of cake, no problem. If you want a coffee, a slice of the cake, and a game of Monopoly, we can do that. If you want to,
is that where the name? Is that where your name came from? We haven't told anybody the name of your business, have we?
No, it's Dice and a Slice, and it's basically slices of cake and slices of pizza.
Wow. So how did you come across this format? Because I've seen one or two places on my global travels where there's a unit which has got like the old retro games and everything else. Loki knows all about that, as he dragged me along to one once. and they seem to be working quite well. But I've never heard of what you're doing in this area. So where did you come up with the idea of the concept?
Well, we came across a few over the years on our travels, and the wife said, right, well, if we come across the chance for a business, this would probably be quite a good one, because we both enjoy games. We have done for years. Some of the games in here I've had since I was 5 or 6. Others we've inherited from our grandparents. They're that old. I've got games in here from the 50s and 60s. So we decided this would be a good one if the opportunity came along. And then by sheer chance, Carol was in getting her nails done. And you know what they're like in these places. They yak about this and that. And one of them said that this shop was coming up for rent. And we thought, what the hell? Why not give it a shot? So that was nearly 2 years ago.
So 2 years ago, you saw the right premises, you had the right idea, you jumped in with both feet, rented the accommodation, which is the shop. How long a lease have you got on it?
3 years at the moment. Hopefully things will pick up. This coronavirus thing will go away and we can extend the lease for much longer after that. We seem to be getting on really well with the landlord. So, touch wood.
So is the landlord being pretty nice about, the fact that you've got no income coming in and things like that? Because it's an interesting thing for a lot of other people in businesses that I presume, is your business rate still having to be paid, or are they suspended that at the moment?
They've suspended our business rates because we're on the small business rates relief scheme anyway. So that automatically happened way back in April. We've had a bit of help in terms of the grant from the government, which has helped pay some of the bills and keep things going. Our landlord has been wonderful, in fairness. You cannot knock him. He's been out of this world. He's been most accommodating. So we're in as good a position as anyone. But, we still got to worry about when we can open, when we can start paying bills, etc.
Now, we're not going to name and shame, but in this case, I think we ought to name and say well done to him. Who is your landlord?
Stephen Brown.
So a big
well done, Stephen.
Well done to him, indeed. So, there's a lot of people actually going, well, my business is renting property, and I still need to get my income and everything else. So if you're getting help with a grant, your business rates, which really are quite phenomenal, aren't they, when you're in a position in a high street, and they've been suspended, and if your landlord is being good, that way you can probably just keep your head above water.
Just about, yeah. Things could be far, far better, obviously. But for the moment, at least, compared to a lot of the people in our part of the industry, we're in a good place.
So how many staff do you actually have there at the cafe?
It's the wife's cafe. I help out, and so does our son. And that's enough, because we're a relatively small establishment. We seat about 25, 30 people. So 3 of us is enough, because we're rarely that busy.
So we've touched on some of the games. Let's start with D&D. Now, me, as a person, even if I've got a dragon just over my shoulder here, I know very little about this game. All I know is from what I've been told by people like Loki, the fact that it's a game where you make characters. What's your take on D&D?
Okay, D&D is basically a set of guidelines. It's rather than a game, and you can use those guidelines to go anywhere you like. We've got dungeon masters that come in with their own world that they've created from scratch. We have other dungeon masters that use pre-established worlds, but basically you can go from sort of Bronze Age right up to firearms and cannon, and anywhere within that historical scope, so what, 2,000 years or so, you can pick a point in time as your base point, pick what, what magic, if any, is available, put it all together, and off you jolly well go. You make it up as you go along. It's all about role play. It's not about a rigid set of rules. It's about how you want to play a particular game. How it originally started back in 1974 as a dungeon crawler, but it's moved on so much since then. You've now got world builders. You've got online help to basically design landscapes to suit yourselves. You can make maps. You can set up pre-established chunks of lore. You can use established characters. You can use established races. You can mix them. The options are literally endless.
Have you actually taken part in one of these games yourself?
Yeah, I routinely play one. There's my character.
So what's the most bizarre?
Got mine right here.
You got yours there, have you? Yeah.
Yeah, I've got my character sheets. I've got about 6 in here.
So you build your story up, and then I presume that the other people who are taking part don't know what the storyline is until they sit down at that table.
It's all down to the dungeon master. He's the one who guides you along and makes sure that you follow the basic storyline.
So what's the average length of a game then of D&D? I know it's like how long's a piece of string, but in your establishment, you can't really say, well, you can carry on till...
Going on now for 14 months and there's no sign of it finishing.
So there's a time limit for the session, but the sessions can continue again and again and again.
And again and again.
Yeah.
Basically, you get to the end of the day and it's time for a kip, and they call it a day there. And next week when you meet again, off you jolly well go.
So how many teams, how many different games of D&D would you expect on normal circumstances when you get back to some sort of normality?
Okay, until we closed, we had RPGs 6 days a week. Not just Dungeons and Dragons, but we also had Pulp Cthulhu on a Tuesday. And our Monday night group tended to change regularly. They played D&D as their base, but they also played other games like Corporation, which is a role-playing game set in a very cyberpunk high corporate world. Think Max Headroom type stuff, half a dozen corporations rule the world and they're battling it out between themselves. So there was that going on. On Tuesdays we had our introductory sessions to D&D so people could learn the basics, and later on in the day we had Pulp Cthulhu going on later on, and then every day except for Saturday we had at least one D&D session.
So what sort of age groups are we talking about who come and partake in these games?
Okay, our youngest player is now 13 and our oldest is 76.
That means there's hope for me yet then, I suppose, really. I must fall into one of those categories, probably closer to the 13 if we're talking about mental age. Physical age, probably at the other end of it as well. But
well, very, very quick point here. You asked how long the longest campaign was at the moment. I've just looked it up, and it's 2 sessions a week, and it's been going on for 38 years, and they're still running the same campaign.
Wow, that must be some sort of storyline then, because I know for a fact that on one of your particular campaigns, Loki, wasn't your character partly a tree or something or other?
There was concept for it, yes. I never actually got to use that character, and that was going for, because with D&D there's loads of different generations. We're currently on the 5th edition, and that particular character was using rules from the 3.5 edition, so it never actually came to be, which is a bit sad.
Yeah. I know one of my ex-colleagues actually from the radio station, Ollie Tooney. He's quite an avid player, isn't he, at your establishment?
Oh yes, Ollie is. Yeah, he plays a couple of times a week and DMs a couple of times a week. He's one of the guys that has built an entire world from scratch. If you ever want to talk to him about something, ask about the Scoundrels Wayne bar menu. The drinks list is huge and very entertaining.
I suppose really let's just explain for anybody who doesn't quite understand what a DM is. Is the DM the person who comes up with the storylines? What does the DM actually? What's he responsible for? Or she? Because let's give you another question first. Male, female. What is the normal mix at a D&D game?
We're getting around about 60% guys, 40% girls. It varies a little. Sometimes it's more like half and half. Sometimes it's a bit less. But it depends on some of the other characters. But I'd say we're getting sort of 60-40s, somewhere in that region. So we get a lot of girls that like to join, but we're trying to find space for them as well. We can only fit so many people around any particular table, otherwise it ceases to be fun. Realistically, you need to limit the number of players to 6 plus a dungeon master.
Right. Let's move on then to what is the role of a dungeon master, a DM.
Right, a dungeon master is an adjudicator. They're also a storyteller, and hopefully they're a better role player than I am, because they have to pick up all the non-player characters as they come along and play their parts, because Dungeons and Dragons is as its heart play acting as well as everything else. It's not all about killing dragons, it's about interacting with everything around you as well. So a dungeon master has to supervise all that. He has to enable all that. It's not they follow the rules. They follow what they call the rule of cool. And if it fits in, fine, we'll allow it. If it's causing trouble, no, not having that.
Yeah. Gotta love the rule of cool.
I must admit, actually, while you were explaining all that, Loki was looking a bit like one of these nodding dogs from the past, what you have on your dashboard in your car. He was nodding. As long as he doesn't nod off, it's fine.
No, it's because I've actually DM'd a few games myself, and I absolutely love DMing. And as Max said, the thing is, we're literally there to put the guidelines down, put down the story, what happens and everything. It's down to the players. I mean, I've got some absolutely brilliant stories, but I really wouldn't want to bore some people with it. But we're there literally just, we have though. If that's the thing with playing D&D, you end up with so many stories. I can come away from any session as a DM or as a player and just have some amazing stories and so much fun and laughter with the other players, because it is a very social game. It's brilliant.
So I presume that the DM is the person who puts the guidelines down, and then the story then evolves as and when.
Yes and no. You can also buy pre-made ones from Wizards of the Coast. They're the people that own Dungeons and Dragons. Hang on. There you go. There's the latest one there.
Everyone currently running it at the minute.
Right, and it details in here maps. Hang on. So you got maps, details of the locations, what you're going to encounter, and how to deal with it. It's all pre-calculated. It's very carefully weighed up and play tested before happening, so you know it's going to work straight out of the box. whereas homebrew tends to be a little more, this isn't going quite the way I'd like it to, we'll quietly shove it sideways a bit. Now,
Yeah.
which
Well,
happens...
we went to a particular venue, which somebody not mentioned in Loki wanted to play, and this is in Orlando, and we went in, and they got like a back room where they're playing the games, but in the front was a shop, and in that shop I've never ever seen so many books like what you were showing. There's books, there's maps, there's artifacts. The big thing is, actually, talk me through this if you would do, Mac. It's a dice game. How many dice are involved in this game? Because somebody might be thinking, well, what do? Turn over a card and tells you what to do? It's not quite like that, is it?
No, that's all you actually need, 7 dice. That's it. But if you ask Lockie, I'm sure he'll tell you most regular players seem to have a desire to have far more than just 7 of these magical, mathematical, clicky rocks.
So what's actually what's on the face of the dice? Because they're not like regular 6-sided dice, are they?
One of them is. Right, okay, so we've got a D6, the bog standard. We've also got a D4, looks like a pyramid.
Oof.
Right, D10, a D100, which is basically 2 D10s together, one of them marked in tens and one of them marked in units, a D8, a D20, and a D12. And that's it.
I presume D stands for how many faces on the dice.
Now, D just means dice. The number is the how many faces.
Right, so let's say the game's just started. It's your turn. You have to throw the dice, and then that will then give you some indication of where you're going to go to on the storyline. Is that how that works?
No. The odd,
okay.
You can play an entire session without rolling the dice once. On the other hand, you can play an entire session where you roll the dice on such a frequent occasion, it's too many times to count. It entirely depends on what you're doing. I've seen groups deal with meeting in a tavern and it taking them 3 hours to decide what they're going to have to drink. I've seen other groups spend 3 hours having a 5-minute battle, and I've seen other groups spend 4 minutes having what everyone thought would be an epic battle. It entirely depends. You have no clue what's going to happen until it starts happening.
So it's the unknown. You're going along, you're going to play a game.
It's all unknown. Until people actually say, well, I'm going to do this. You don't know what's going to happen. If you're sitting there as the DM, you're panicking because you're thinking, what if they find a hole in my storyline? What if they spot the weak spot in what I've set up? Because if they do, they're going to just go straight through it. On the other hand, they might not, in which case you can keep them occupied for a couple of hours dealing with what is little more than a secret door.
Loki, you were going to say something.
Yeah, what's better is, I wasn't going to, but I'm going to just recount a little mini story here, which is following what Mac was saying about players sometimes finding holes in your storylines and holes in what can be done. I was running a game and there was a big magical ceremony going on, magic ritual going on. And my players actually found a hole I hadn't even considered and destroyed an item which completely destroyed everything. And what was going to be a big battle turned into one person doing one action. And as the DM, because it wasn't an official storyline, it's what they call homebrew, I had to quickly think on my feet. So sometimes the players can really throw the DM through a loop.
Oh yeah, happens all the time.
What is the most bizarre character that you've ever become then, Mac?
I generally pick relatively straightforward characters. I tend to like playing rogues, rangers, fighters. Other people go for far more complex ones. I like keeping it simple because I'm kind of old fashioned about it. You know, I first played the game many moons ago when we weren't playing it properly, but we were having a go. These days I've got a bit better at it. But as a result, I tend to stick to the basics. I tend to stick to rogues. I tend to stick to fighters. I've never been a big fan of the magic users. It's just a personal thing. Other people are far more complex. Well, I mean, we got Warforged warlocks coming in and things like that, which is quite a complex one because Warforged is basically a robot designed to fight wars. So first of all, it's got to be isolated from the control that makes it a Warforged robot. Then it's got to decide it wants to like nature enough to become a warlock, and that makes it a very complex one. We do have many others that come in, and I could bore you, honestly.
So in your establishment, like what I was saying about what we encountered in Orlando, do you have lots of books and things like that which are available for people to either read or purchase?
We do, yes. At the moment, we've let the stock run down, obviously, but we do have a range of manuals. We do have the starter sets. We have the dice sets. We go less for some of the artifacts that other places go for because not enough people want them in Ilfracombe. But on the other hand, the basic manuals and dice, you know, there are always people that want those.
So hopefully, when we get out of the situation which we are at the moment, then people should come back and start playing. But it'd be quite nice actually if we can get a few more people along to your establishment, because we're talking D&D. Let's talk some of the other games which are available at your establishment, which you find that a lot of people like to come in and play. They are what sort of games?
Okay, we have a range of games. We have trading games. Settlers of Catan is the classic example. We have manual dexterity games, things like Men at Work, which is a relatively modern one where you're basically putting together a building site and balancing these little bits and bobs on it as you go. And if anything falls off, then you lose a life. Then we've got Roll and Rights. There's dozens and dozens of those where you roll dice, and depending on what the dice tell you, you tick off various boxes that increase your score, and at the end of the game, whoever's got the high score wins. Then you've got games like Azul, that one, Azul Stained Glass of Sintra, which is part of the Azul family now. Lockie likes it already. Where you're playing with these. I don't know if you can see them very well. They look a bit like spangles from when you was a kid. You're playing with those, you're laying them out on these, and the idea is to try and complete them. And at the same time, your opponents are trying to screw you over. Then you've got games where you're putting together railways, Ticket to Ride. It's an incredibly popular game. We've got many variants on it, ranging from New York and London, which take a few minutes to play, to the full fat Europe, which can take a couple of hours, or the worldwide rails and sails, which can also take a couple of hours. So you've got the same game, but you can play it the quick version or you can play it a much longer version. Let's see, we've got quiz games. There are no shortage of them. We've got games that make you want to do silly things, or You've got games that where you can. Here's one over here. What came first?
Well, oh,
Yeah, most people get this incredibly wrong. Right out. What came first, Heelys or Crocs?
So it's like a 50-50 game.
Crocs.
Nope. Heelys started in 1999. Crocs arrived in 2002. There you go. What about Coke and Pepsi?
Oh, I'm fielding this one to Martin because he's used this in one of his quizzes before.
I believe it's Pepsi. Coke came along afterwards, but they changed the ingredients slightly. Coca-Cola first started off with using cocaine as one of the main ingredients, which created a bit of a problem.
Indeed. However, Coke started in 1886. Pepsi Cola was originally called Brad's Drink in 1893, so Coke came first, but only just.
Oh,
I knew it was going to be a fairly close thing. Very similar, but you using slightly different ingredients at the bottom end of it, like, you know.
But, you know, that's a very popular game, especially with teenagers. We've also got weird things people search for. Some of the things that people type into Google are hilarious. You've also got games like Cards Against Humanity. I'm not a fan myself because it's potentially really transphobic and racist and things like that. We've got one in because we have to have one, but I'm not a fan.
So how has your... Sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was going to say I've played it a few times, and it's one of those, it depends who you're playing with as well, because the whole point is to make the most shocking statements. You get a card that has a little bit of a sentence, which is laid down for everyone to see, and you're dealt a set of cards with continuing statements, and some of them are the whole point of the game is to be as rude as possible. So I can understand why you've only got one copy in there, because it is very risque, shall we say.
Yeah, we don't like it because it tends to fall into homophobic and racial connotations far too easily, so we just don't want to know. We've got one because it's kind of one of those games you have to have when you're running a place like this, but we don't sort of advertise that we've got it. You have to actually ask for it, and we circle it out from the back shelves. It's not one that we keep up at the forefront of the cafe where everyone can see it.
It's a question for you, Mac. With technology being like it is, and there's so many games at the moment which you can actually play on your tablet, on your phone, and everything else, has that affected your business in any way?
No, because people still feel the need to sit around the table and argue over a board game. And you can't do that with a tablet, or a phone or whatever. It's a case of you make your move, the other guy makes his move. Yeah, okay, I don't like that. What are you going to do? Throw it across the room? Whereas if you're sitting around the table with your opponent sitting next to you and across from you, you can discuss it. You can argue about it. You can laugh about it.
It's a social gathering as well, isn't it?
It's the social thing that's so important, and a lot of people are missing out on this at the moment because they've got nowhere to go. Some people are on this shielded list where they can't actually meet anyone. Other people are just limited to their family, and I think everyone in the country is having problems with this. It's affecting them to a greater or lesser extent. And they need places like this to reconnect with family, with friends, where they've got something to act as a central thing. So those awkward silences that are going to happen when they first get back together again don't matter so much because it's your move.
Yeah, looking into the future
Yeah.
with your particular brand, and when things ease and they get better and you start getting the people back into your shop, are you considering extending your brand to other towns within, say, North Devon?
Within North Devon, probably not, because there is only really room for the one of us. We might think about moving to Barnstable, but we'd have to think long and hard about that just to make us more central. But if we opened up anywhere else, we'd be taking away business from here, if you follow what I mean, because there's only so many people around and about us.
Well, talking on that lines, and you said that you were running regular sessions several times a week. How far are people prepared to travel to come to your establishment?
The other side of Billyford. We got people coming from Applebourne, Northern Bideford. We got people coming from Barnstable, Combe Martin, South Molton. The whole of what we would think of as North Devon, basically, they're coming here. If it's on the number 21 bus route, even better.
If that's the case, then there's no point in moving if you've got a well-established place, unless you need a bigger premises. What would be your dream? What would be your ideal size to actually operate in?
The place we've got now, plus about the same amount of space again, but subdivided, so we can put 2 or 3 games going on simultaneously in separate rooms where they're not going to disturb one another.
I must admit, actually, when I was a younger person, it used to be like the Friday night session with the family coming round. Out would come a pack of cards, or we would have a Monopoly out, or something like that. That used to be a big social thing within the family to look forward to. Of course, that sort of thing don't really happen quite so much. So that's where your establishment is actually making that up, isn't it? It's like, here's a place, because I can remember with, like, it was a Friday night, it would be round my parents' house. The following week, it'd be round Uncle and Auntie's house, and so on. But a lot of people don't actually get involved in that so much now. So that's probably where the niche in the market is for you.
Yes, that's true. And also we offer games that the parents and grandparents remember playing when they were kids that they'd like to introduce their children and grandchildren to. We've got those. Some of them are quite hard to come by. Some of them are very expensive, but they can come to ours and just play it once, and they feel that they've passed something on to their grandchildren and their children in the doing.
So what is the stock of games? How many games do you have in total in your establishment?
We stopped counting when we got to 600.
And basically, there's only a certain amount of life in a game if it's not looked after. Does that ever become a problem where people are abusing the equipment that you're supplying?
No, because we're small enough that we're right next to them, so they're not going to do anything obviously silly, because we immediately pull them up. So wear and tear happens, and over time a game can be played about, in our experience, about 200 to 250 times before you start thinking about replacing some or all in the parts. Some games are more robust. The traditional drafts and chess, for example, they're pretty much indestructible. So long as you don't actually throw them across the room, you can play a chess set that's 50 years old just as well as you can play a set that's bought last week. A deck of cards, realistically, a couple of 100 games for card-based games before they get too dog-eared to use, and then you have to replace. And other games are sort of between the two.
I think
I've got a question about.
Go on.
Sorry, go on.
I was just,
I was just going to ask about
Loki, ask your question.
Do you want to go, Martin? Right. Just about two particular games that have come to mind, actually. You say about that you have some of the older games that parents and grandparents would like to play with their kids. I'm going to ask a D&D related one here then. So do you have the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons or the original Dungeons and Dragons there as well then? And the other one being Munchkin. Do you have Munchkin there?
We've got a couple of different Munchkins, and yes, I do have some of the original D&D stuff, and indeed AD&D stuff. We don't fish it out. We try and stick with 5e because then everyone's singing from the same song sheet. So the AD&D and D&D stuff, we're probably going to have to sell off soon because we just haven't got the space for it, along with everything else. But we do have some.
So are you actually, the shop, is it just on one level or do you have a stock room as well?
It's basically, it's one large room with two smaller rooms. One of the smaller rooms is lined with shelves with more games in, and the other one is basically our kitchen area because of the cafe.
Now, what I was actually going to say to you at some point was, have you ever thought about, and I wouldn't mind coming along actually and doing this, an actual quiz master coming in and doing a quiz night in front of a capacity, hopefully, 26, 30 people?
Well, no, because all the pubs do quizzes, and there's no point in reinventing the wheel.
Good point. I've got people trying to come in.
That's very good point.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Let's move on to another part of your business, and then we'll do any questions afterwards.
Okay.
You're saying that apart from games, it's a cafe.
Yep.
What sort of things have you got on your menu?
Okay. Pizza, of course. We've got 3 basic pizzas, and then we'll mix and match to suit you. If you ask for something specific, we will do our very best to give you what you ask for. Worst case scenario, the co-op's only over the road. If you ask for something really weird, we can always dash over there if they've got it and do that for you. We also do jacket potatoes, we do paninis. We do stuff that people can eat while they're playing, rather than concentrate on eating or concentrate on playing. They can do both. We also do cake. We do quite a lot of cake. We make nearly all of it ourselves. Sometimes we buy it in purely because we don't have time. But most of the cake we sell, we make ourselves.
Trading on a normal sort of trading day, opening and closing times.
We open at midday and we shut once the last gamer leaves. We don't chuck anyone out. So long as they're playing and having fun, we ain't going to chuck you out. Our personal best or worst is 10 to 1 in the morning. No, sorry, 10 to 2 in the morning.
Well, I suppose because you're not a licensed premises, you're not then governed by licensing hours, are you?
We have no we don't do booze. We only do soft drinks, tea, coffee, and what have you. So, as I said, so long as our customers are enjoying themselves and not being a pain in the arse for our neighbours, we keep open for them. And 10 to 2 is the latest we've closed.
I believe Loki might have a question.
No, actually, it was more of a shout out. Tom Humphreys has basically said that he's watching from the D&D in Devon page. So it's a quick shout out and a hello to Tom.
Hello, Tom.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Chris. This is good. That's good. Just running across the bottom of the screen. What else have we got? That's one at the moment, isn't it? I don't know how come it's scrolling, but it is. But hey ho, that's the way it goes. So hopefully back to normal by the latter part. I suppose really what you're going to be struggling with at the moment is the fact, like a lot of other people within hospitality, it feels like we're having 3 winters on the trot. The one what we just come through, the one which is now, and the one in front. Is that how you and other traders are feeling?
It is. Whether we like it or not, we all make a great deal of our money in the summer. In the winter, we're open. It just about pays the bills. It doesn't really pay us. In the summer, pardon me, that's when we earn the money that helps to pay us. And 3 winters in the trot is going to be seriously hard for everybody. Not just us, but every single pub, restaurant, and even the takeaways all over the town, all in the same boat. None of us are doing as well as we'd like.
Under the normal circumstances, when Victorian Week is on in Ilfracombe, I presume that that's been cancelled for this year. But do you find that there was a big influx of people interested in coming into your establishment?
We did, especially since we started doing this one, Cake, Cogs and Sword Sticks. It's a steampunk role-playing game, relatively simple to understand, and we combined it with like a cream tea. So you came in, you had a few sandwiches, a cream tea, and a game, and that was starting to become popular. Because it was set in the whole steampunk thing, so it fitted right in with Victorian Week, and of course, boom, gone.
Yeah, because they've connected the two, haven't they, to Victorian Week and steampunk as well. They put the two together a few years ago, whereas before Victorian Week was a celebration of heritage of Ilfracombe, with people walking around in costumes of that period. Now you've got the steampunks walking around as well. And I suppose that's going to be sorely missed this coming year.
Very much so. I mean, some people felt that it makes no difference to them. Other people were really into it. And it does and did bring in a lot of people, especially at this point in the year where it's between school holidays, so we're getting a lot of grown-ups that haven't got kids to worry about coming down, and this was another way of entertaining them and bringing them in, and we've lost that, at least for this year. So the people with no kids that were coming have decided, well, they've got no real choice, have they? They've got to stay at home, but they would normally spend a few days down here, or some would spend the entire week, some would just spend the weekend or midweek breaks. The hotels were always reasonably busy because of it, but at the moment, of course, we're all kind of snookered.
Yeah, and also the film festival, that's gone by the wayside as well, hasn't it?
I believe so, yes. I'm afraid I don't know very much about that one, but it's again the cinema's got an even bigger problem than we have, because they got far more people trying to squeeze into a very small area.
Yeah, I suppose when you start like stacking up all the events that go on in Ilfracombe, Birdman, that's probably gone as well. So it's a really hard time for you and everybody else actually within the town.
The beer festival's probably going to go. The Birdman, I'm certain, has gone. The rescue day, the RNLI, Fire Brigade and all that down at the harbour, that's gone. It's just not good at all. It's a big chunk of what brought people to the town.
It's a shame, but hopefully it'll all come back next year. Are you fairly confident that recovery after this will be pretty swift, or do you think it's going to be a hard sort of graft, not taking into account the fact, like I touched on, that it could possibly be 3 winter seasons, one after the other, but looking forward to next spring, next summer, Do you think you'll probably get back to where you were?
Yeah, by next spring we will, yes. Next summer should be as good as our last summer, and as good, if not better, than the summer we were hoping for this year. So, yeah, hopefully that is what we're planning for. We don't see any reason to think that it's not going to happen, not at the moment anyway. But we are going to have to wait and see a certain amount, because people are still making their minds up about what they want to do. A lot more people are probably going to want to have a break in the UK next year than they were a couple of years ago, where a lot of people were going abroad. The recent hot weather we've had is probably making a big difference on that decision as well. They've got a much better chance of some decent sunshine staying at home. So I honestly expect it to be as good, if not better, over the next couple of summers.
Yeah, I've got to agree with you, actually, because I think a lot of people are going to be hesitant about taking foreign holidays. But we'll be talking holidays actually here next Wednesday, when we have Jake Goodenough from the Destination Lounge to find out exactly what's going on in the travel world. So fingers crossed, hopefully. The other thing, actually, talking with some people in the hospitality trade, there's a lot of people talking about the fact that when the restrictions start getting lifted, we could end up having a little bit of a late summer. The fact that there could be a lot more people down and around in our wonderful part of the world, September, October, November. Do you think that's a possibility for yourself?
I do, yes. Going on the last couple of years, the weather should be quite good, which will help encourage people to come down. Certainly till mid-October, maybe a bit after that, it's not so sure, but certainly until mid-October, I'm optimistic that we'll have reasonable weather, which will help people come down. And if they do get the odd rainy day, that's exactly what a place like this needs, because on a nice day, everyone wants to go to the beach. And in the summer, we want the occasional rainy day, because that brings people in here, because they're all sitting around in their caravans and hotel rooms thinking, what we're going to do today? But we give them something that they can do today. So the odd rainy day in the middle of a few nice sunny days is exactly what we're looking for.
So I suppose historically, on previous years, October half term was fairly good for you then, was it?
Yes, indeed. October half term, plus because October half term stretches to 2 weeks, because our half term isn't the same as half terms in places like Birmingham. So
let's just get your take on one thing, Mac, before we say thank you and goodbye. A lot of people are saying that the restrictions are being lifted too soon. Outside of the fact that your business is struggling and suffering at the moment, do you think it's too soon to lift the restrictions at the moment, or do you think you would like to see the people coming back now? This is outside business. This is your own personal view take on it.
My own personal view is it's too soon to lift the restrictions that are in place. Some of the restrictions don't go far enough at the moment. I think the 2 metre rule is essential, at least for now. And I think when the government allowed people out and about a bit more than they were, they should have said stick within 20 miles of your front door. And we should be having that to stop it spreading, potentially spreading as fast as it has. Of course, any changes, you don't really know whether the changes are going to make any difference until 2 weeks or so after you've made the change, because that's when the test results come in to show how many more people or how many less people have got the virus.
It's a tough one to call, isn't it? Especially, as I said, your head says, no, come on down now. Your heart says it's too soon. So you're between the devil and the deep blue sea on that one. But honesty is always the best policy. and hopefully you will prevail and your business will get back to a normality. We must have you come and talk to us again sometime. It's been a very interesting hour. Thank you very much indeed. Stay safe. Kind regards to your wife and everybody else involved in your business, and the best of luck. One more thing I'm going to say. Just tell everybody that the name of your shop, where you are. Have you got a website?
We're on Dice and a Slice in Ilfracombe, right in the high street. Find us on Facebook. We do have a website. It's not a particularly good one, but we monitor Facebook all the time. If you want to buy games, we are open for that. If you just let us know what you want, we'll get back to you and sort out delivery anywhere you like at a small charge. If it's in and around Ilfracombe, we deliver it for nothing. Or we'll even open up and wait for you to come and collect. It's your choice.
Have you got a phone contact number?
I have, but I can't remember it. I answer it. I never phone it.
Okay, have a look. Google it. You'll find out all those details.
It's on Facebook. It's on Google. It's on all that. You can't miss us, really. If you want to find us, you can't miss us. We're on TripAdvisor as well.
Mac, a big thank you indeed for joining us today. It's been an absolute honour to have you, and I hope it all gets back to as it should be.
Thank you very much for having me.